Live from Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South. I'm Sonia Gray and I'm hosting the evening news brief from Telesio English. We start this new edition right now. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has given a news conference in which he celebrated the results of the recent regional elections. Maduro severely criticized the opposition's refusal to recognize the results. He also presented evidence of how opposition election monitors had recorded their signatures to validate the electoral system's auditing process. Let's just listen to what he said.
A la clase obrera en primer lugar, a los campesinos y campesinas.
I ask this is delivered to all international correspondents. I have these audits here with the signatures. 10 prior audits of the entire electoral system, the software, the voting system. With the signature of all witnesses of the opposition parties certifying that everything is transparent, everything is okay. Don't lie to the world. Proof is here. We're always willing to advance with Trinidad and Tobago. I send my greetings to the First Minister. We're going to visit Trinidad and Tobago very soon to keep guaranteeing Jorge more efficiently to accelerate joint gas production. We signed all the agreements, the only case of the world where we share gas blocks between two countries. So I want to accelerate and see the day where we turn on the machine for the Venezuelan and Trinidad and Tobago gas. Governor, I have a very special mission for you. I want you to become the governor that joins Trinidad and Tobago and that you visit that nation every week to sign commercial agreements, taking care of the Venezuelan community, their air, sea transportation. You become the brother governor and you call the minister of Foreign Affairs. And when I say every week, I'm not exaggerating, because Trinidad and Tobago is a country, a state, where they have deep history of brotherhood with Venezuela.
In Venezuela, thousands of Chavistas gathered in the city of Los Teques, the capital of Miranda State, to welcome their new governor, Hector Rodriguez. The Miranda State was controlled by Venezuelan opposition for 2 consecutive terms for over 8 years. With 52.5% of the votes, Hector Rodriguez was elected on Sunday and will be replacing one of the main leaders of Venezuela's opposition, Enrique Capriles.
We are celebrating the victory of Hector Rodriguez. Miranda State is happy to recover the state and in removing fascism. The state returns to be revolutionary, to be red. Everybody in the state is happy now.
A message to Donald Trump. A beautiful democracy is here in Venezuela, where we have had 22 electoral processes in 19 years, and in which the people have participated massively.
The people from Miranda are happy to recover the state today after too much apathy and the abandonment of the fascist Capriles Radonsky.
We thank our President Nicolas Maduro for his strength so that we can recover peace in the country.
So we head on now to our correspondent in Caracas, Reagan Devines, to give us more details on this upset in the electoral decisions. Reagan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Sonia. I hope you are as well. Listen, there were trying to explain exactly what happened this morning with Hector Rodriguez as he walked through, as he tried to walk through the crowd to the podium. He was hugged, kissed, stopped. People took selfies with him. This guy is loved like few others. I mean, his winning the Miranda State was an upset, yes, to Enrique Capriles. but his supporters were there for him, and they proved that with the vote. Today, just a bit about Hector Rodriguez. He got a start as a student leader at UCV, the Central University of Venezuela, where he became president of the law school in 2004. In 2007, he got the attention of then-President Hugo Chavez at a national debate between opposition and Chavista students. And his debating skills were so impressive that he was invited to become a part of the PSUV officially, later becoming a minister in 2008. In 2013, he was the Minister of Youth Affairs. 2014, Minister of Education. He has had an impressive start within the party, the PSUV party, and this is just his latest success thus far. He has an impressive youth following. The people where he was given papers this morning by his accreditation by the National Electoral Body, the NE. And those people around Venezuela, a lot of them have seen him in action in Caracas, in the center of Caracas. Wherever he goes, he is amazing. He's charismatic and he speaks really well, and he has a great passion for what he does. And he truly believes in the socialist movement and in what the government has been doing for the country. Now, today, he, along with 22 other members, 22 other newly elected governors of those 23 states, was supposed to have been officially sworn in by the National Assembly. However, it's been postponed until tomorrow at 11 a.m. The reason for this is that the final state that we had been talking about earlier on this week, the state of Bolivar, that where there were issues with the machinery there, just this morning, President Nicolas Maduro said that the PSUV party had officially won the state of Bolivar, so did the Vice President, Tarek Al-Assaimi. However, this has not been confirmed by the CNE, so we can't really say it's official information. However, the swearing-in ceremony has been postponed to tomorrow, so that's what we're waiting on right now, sir.
Thank you so much for that update, Reagan Devines. That was Reagan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. We will have more news in a minute. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Brazil's lower house Justice Commission is discussing the corruption case against Brazil's unelected president, Michel Temer. Our correspondent in Brasilia, Adriana Robreño, has the details.
Sí, hola, gracias. Un saludo aquí en Brasilia, en la.
Here from Brasilia, the Constitution and Justice Commission in Brazil's Congress today started a series of debates around the denunciation against President Michel Temer, accused of obstructing justice and criminal organization. Last week, the rapporteur of the commission, Bonifacio de Andrade, from the Brazilian Social Democracy Party, urged the legislators to hold back on denouncing President Temer. But despite that, according to the opposition, there is substantial evidence which proves the President Temer's involvement in the alleged corruption events. And actually this weekend it came out that the financial operator of the PMD, where President Temer has been implicated on various corruption issues, accused Temer of receiving bribes from the former presidency of the lower house of Congress, Eduardo Cunha, who is in prison. And the current situation might complicate further the position of Michel Temer, as right now at the Constitution and Justice Commission, according to an opposition congressman, Temer has managed to maneuver his allies inside. But the decision that the Commission might take will not be definitive. Whatever the decision might be, the final word will be with the plenary power of Congress. The voting for that decision will take place next week. Here, the vote at the Commission is expected to take place tomorrow or maybe on Thursday, because over 100 congressmen will have the right to speak. along with 66 non-commissioned members. Each person will be allocated at least 15 minutes. So there will be long sessions, and that is why the voting process could end on Wednesday or on Thursday, and maybe it will be next week when the plenary power of Congress will speak, where Temer doesn't have the same influence. We come back to you, Soyini.
That was Adriana Robreño in Brasilia. And we're still in Brazil, where the rural landless workers have occupied the Institute of Colonization and Agrarian Reform, demanding advances in agricultural policies and distribution of land to the campesinos. Our correspondent Ignacio Limas has the details.
Saludos estudios, nos encontramos en este momento en el barrio Santa Cecilia en Sao Paulo.
We are in the Santa Cecilia neighborhood in Sao Paulo, where Brazil's rural landless workers movement, the MST, have occupied the National Institute of Agrarian Reform. The same is happening across different offices of the Institute nationwide, where they are demanding advances on the agrarian reform and distribution of land to the campesinos. What's happening is that the government paralyzed essentially all of the budget for the agrarian reform. The process stopped in Brazil, along with other ones, such as the purchase of food from the small producers and from the families of farmers, as well as other processes that were working towards better distribution of land in the country. Let's recall that the administration of President Michel Temer just approved the sale of territories that were reserved for lands agreed under the agrarian reform. And for the landless workers movement, they see the sale as a betrayal, because the land that was agreed on has been put back on the market. That's why different demonstrations and protests have been seen across the country, and occupations on large estates. Even here in Sao Paulo, roughly 400 families are protesting and demanding for land. There are also 3,000 families that are camping next to the roads. That's why the landless workers movement are saying that the agrarian reform is necessary. This is the information that we have from here. We're going to keep you posted on what's happening over here with the occupation.
Ignacio Limas in Sao Paulo. Public workers in Chile have called for a demonstration prior to salary adjustment negotiations with the government. Some of the demands include salary adjustments, return of vacation bonuses, and the fulfillment of promises that the government made during negotiations back in 2014. Some of these promises included incentives for retiring workers in the public sector, among others. And Chilean public workers are pressuring the government to give them at least a 6% adjustment in their salaries through a mobilization. Our correspondent, Francisca Castillo, is in Santiago with the story.
Today, public workers from Chile are set to mobilize. The demonstration is meant to put pressure on the government as talks about salary adjustments approach. While the government suggests a 3.2% adjustment, workers are asking for at least a 6% adjustment. This is something that workers have demanded since last August, but they have not received any response. Just less than a week ago, the public sector called for a general strike for this Tuesday. However, plans had to change due to the demonstration, because shortly after this announcement, the government called for negotiation talks for Friday, October 20th. This is a request that workers don't want to postpone because of the upcoming presidential and parliamentary elections. So by the end of this week, Minister of Finance Nicolas Maduro and Minister of Labor Alejandra Kraus will meet with representatives of the workers to address the demands of the sector.
Thanks to Francisca Castillo for that report. Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, the former Argentine president, who is running for a Senate seat, closed her legislative election campaign in front of a crowd of around 100,000 people at the Presidente Perón Stadium. The October 22nd legislative elections will play a crucial role in determining whether Macri will be able to continue with his neoliberal reforms in the country. Fernandez said the meeting was also to let Macri know that the people don't accept his policies.
This debt of today is going to be paid by your children. We don't want our children and our grandchildren to form queues once again in front of the embassies because there's no future for them in the country.
Former Guatemalan President Otto Perez Molina, who is up for corruption charges, told a judge that he is innocent. He said that the prosecution lacks evidence and his lawyer has asked that the charges be dismissed. The former leader is currently imprisoned while on trial for his connection with an alleged corruption scheme known as The Line. The scheme allegedly involved businesses paying bribes to officials to avoid custom taxes in 2013 when President Molina was in power. He took office in 2012 and resigned, but was jailed in 2015 due to the corruption cases and other charges. 74-year-old Martha Hatay, one of the Shining Path's top leaders, was released on Monday after 25 years in prison. Hatay, also known as Comrade Rosa, was arrested in October 1992 and was charged with crimes such as planning, supervision, and execution of violent acts and attacks carried out by the Shining Path. A small group of protesters gathered outside the prison early in the day, demonstrating against her release. We now go to Bolivia, where thousands head to the streets in the cities of La Paz and El Alto, demanding the extradition of former President Sanchez de Lozada. Our correspondent Freddy Morales has the story.
In the cities of La Paz and El Alto, demonstrations are taking place to demand the extradition of the ex-president Sanchez de Lozada and several of his former ministers who continue to live in the U.S. protected by their status of political refugees. 14 years ago, Sanchez de Lozada was forced to leave Bolivia after a 2-week mobilization of the popular sectors in the country. Back then, people protested his project of exporting natural gas to the U.S. through Chilean ports. Sanchez de Lozada's government responded with repression, and there were 67 deaths and over 400 injured. Since then, the relatives of the victims of the Bolivian state itself are demanding justice. Their central demand is for Sanchez de Lozada and his minister to be extradited back to Bolivia so they can be processed by the justice system.
Freddy Morales in Bolivia. Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in sexism. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort.
Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in machismo. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort. In Sao Paulo alone, reports of attempted rape and sexual assault have risen by over 10% this last year, and regular taxis are one of the worst places for such crimes. Many women feel safer traveling with a female driver.
Separating men and women isn't a permanent solution. If we don't understand that we are different, we will always be separated. I think that the taxi is a tool to fight for space, to show my work, so I can be seen as a worker and not an object. When Femitaxi appeared, it provided me safety during a time when I didn't have the support of being seen as a worker. So we women are helping each other. We stand to show society that we can also do this job.
Femitaxi now has 1,000 drivers and provides more than 20,000 rides per month in 6 cities across the country. Founder Charles Henrique Calfat said he plans to expand into 2 more Brazilian cities in coming months, then Mexico and Argentina early next year.
You'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Canada and Mexico are set to firmly reject the U.S. proposal floated in the current round of NAFTA negotiations. This is according to 2 people briefed on the country's positioning. Talks among the 3 countries ended on Monday. However, both Canada and Mexico will not walk away from the negotiating table. It remains to be seen how U.S. President Donald Trump will react to the position. Trump has repeatedly threatened to terminate NAFTA if a new deal is not made. Fires in Galicia continue as citizens protest the lack of resources and poor help from the government. Our correspondent Romina Piñate is on the field with more.
Saludos a toda nuestra audiencia, pues seguimos recorriendo Galicia.
We're still in Galicia and we keep seeing things like this. What you see here is a burnt mobile house, reduced to ashes. We're not only facing an environmental disaster, but also a social disaster. Just a few minutes ago, we met a neighbor who by himself with a shovel was trying to put out small fires and potential fires that still remain in his area. He was complaining at the lack of resources, and he was saying that firefighters are not enough, which is the same complaint that most citizens were having last night during the protests in Vigo, where thousands of people were protesting against forest policies. They were asking for the resignation of Rajoy. They were also asking for the resignation of Alberto Núñez Feijóo, the president of the Junta de Galicia and the Popular Party. The citizens were claiming that the lack of resources and the firing of over 436 firefighters 15 days ago was due to these policies from the Popular Party, which is prioritizing the economic benefits for privatized companies. We should remember that all fire policies here in Galicia are external. The system has been privatized, and citizens were saying that the officials are trying to benefit these companies without considering the citizens, without considering the needs of the citizens and neighbors. We're still working in Galicia to tell you the stories. We can't forget that there's still over 100 active fires in Portugal and over 20 here in Galicia, apparently all controlled.
Encontremos por el camino. Recordemos que todavía hay más de 100 incendios activos en Portugal y más de una veintena aquí en Galicia. Eso sí, aparentemente todos ya controlados.
We thank Romina Piñate for that report. U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras to the White House earlier today. The Greek Prime Minister's visit comes one day after Greece and the International Monetary Fund agreed that the next bailout review of the country's fiscal and reform progress must be concluded quickly. Trump and Tsipras are to discuss the flow of U.S. investment into the country, and according to Trump, they will be looking at a way to help each other. And still in the United States, where a judge has barred the White House from implementing yet another version of President Donald Trump's controversial executive order on immigration. The judge blocked the travel plan just hours before it was to go into full effect. This marks the latest blow to Trump's long-standing efforts to indefinitely restrict entry of travelers from targeted countries into the United States. The U.S. government is likely to swiftly appeal. And now here are some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Hundreds of protesters gathered outside the Central Court of Law in the Maltese capital of Valletta to demand answers over the murder of anti-corruption journalist Daphne Caruana Galicia. Daphne was killed near her home on Monday after a bomb was planted under her car. The journalist had led the Panama Papers investigation into corruption on the small Mediterranean island. Her most recent investigation singled out Malta's Prime Minister Joseph Muscat and his closest aides for possible links to illegal offshore activities. No group or individual has yet claimed responsibility for the murder.
I condemn without reservation the barbaric attack on the person and against the freedom of speech in our country. Everyone knows Caruana Galicia was a harsh critic of mine, both politically and personally, but nobody can justify this barbaric attack in any way which is against all dignity and civility.
Militias from the Syrian Democratic Forces have declared victory over the Islamic State group in their former stronghold of Raqqa. Flags were raised in the centre of the city after an offensive which had been going on since June. The SDF, a fighting force made up of Arabs, Kurds and Assyrians, have claimed that IS have been pushed out from the city. Raqqa has been the Islamic State group's capital in Syria since the group swept through the region in 2014. Many of the group's key logistical planning for the attacks across the region and in Europe were planned from the city. Dozens have died following a Taliban attack on a police training centre in the eastern city of Gardez. The attackers broke through the compound with a car bomb, which was then followed on by several gunmen who stormed the centre. The attack was soon followed by a similar attack in Ghazni, where fighters battled police forces after a truck bomb was detonated. Emergency services are struggling to cope with the rising number of wounded from both attacks, which reportedly include women and children. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has declared that the southern city of Marari has been liberated from Islamic State fighters after a 5-month-long battle against the group. However, military reports have said that fighting in the city is still continuing. Despite the recent death of the head of the Islamic State group in Southeast Asia, Isnilon Hapilon, who was recently killed in the city. The search for survivors from Saturday's deadly bomb blast in Mogadishu, which killed over 200 people, continues. Rescue efforts are ongoing after a boy was pulled from the rubble overnight, 2 days on from the attack.
This evening, 24 hours after the explosion, we pulled out from under the rubble a young man who was alive. The first thing he asked was for a phone so that he could call his family. And because of that, we won't stop looking for any more survivors, for as long as it takes.
We've come to the end of this midday news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telestudiotv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestio English, I am Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching us.